If you have been playing chess for some time now, you have probably heard about the concept of imbalances in chess. This concept is employed by international master Jeremy Silman to assess positions in chess and analyze them strategically to find good moves. But it's a very complex concept, but today I'm going to bring it in a very simple and easy way so anyone can use it. This might look like an oversimplification, but it's not, I guarantee you. You just have to ask yourself two simple questions so you can assess the position, evaluate, analyze, and try to find better moves. But before we begin, if you are not subscribed to the channel yet, what are you waiting for? Click the button down below and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. I play many video games and online games myself, and if you are a gamer and you play video games and online games just like me, you have probably stumbled upon this problem of balancing the games. So a new patch comes out, or a new character, a new hero, or maybe a new set of cards if you play, I don't know, Magic the Gathering or Pokemon TCG. And then the new cards are just too powerful and there is no balancing between the old cards and the new cards, or the old heroes and the new heroes. So they have to keep trying to balance the game so everyone can have a balanced match. This is not a problem in chess because chess is probably the most balanced game ever. Just think about it. You start basically with the exact same pieces, so you have no advantage over your opponent. You play moves alternate or in alternate order. So I play one and you play one, and basically we can argue that white has a small edge because it starts creating the first move. So maybe there's an edge, and we can see that reflected in the games, as white usually they win a bit more games than black. But in the end of the day, you have the same pieces in the exact same position, so it's hard to get more balanced than that. So if we look at the starting position here on the chessboard, you have a very symmetrical and balanced game with the pieces in the same position. So white takes the initiative to play the first move and create an imbalance in the game. So you are creating some kind of difference in the position. So you have something that your opponent doesn't. And these are the two questions you should ask yourself. And the first question is, what do I have that my opponent doesn't have? And the second question is the opposite of that. What does my opponent has that I don't have? So when white plays the first move e4, for example, now they have a central pawn. They are controlling some squares. They have some open lines for the bishop, queen. And I mean, this is a good advantage, right? But black right away is going to play their first move, which let's say it's e5, and then they rebalance the game again. Everything is again balanced. There is nothing that white has that black doesn't, so they both have the same central pawn on the same file. They have control over pretty much the same squares for the bishops and queens as well, so the game is pretty much equal, right? So if we could consider this like a draw, it's completely draw because everyone has basically the exact same things, the exact same pieces in the exact same squares. But then white comes and plays another move, now attacking this pawn. Black can go ahead and do the same, play this knight out, attacking this pawn. This is a valid move and it's an opening that's playable. But more often than not, black just goes for the defense here and defends this pawn. So now we have a game that is more, let's say, imbalanced. We have some things that white has and black doesn't, and vice versa. So now white has this king's knight developed and black has the queen's knight developed. Both have a central pawn, but it's a little different now. White goes ahead and strikes white with d4, which is the Scotch game. And now there is like some tension here. Black goes ahead and takes it, and white captures back. Now, what does white have that black doesn't, and what does black have that white doesn't? So you always have to ask yourself this question so you can figure out what are the differences, the imbalances in the position, mainly looking for pawn structure, piece development, and even material. For example, if I have a knight and my opponent has a bishop, then there is an imbalance there because they are different pieces, even though they are pretty much relatively the same value. They are different pieces, so this is an imbalance as well. In a position like that, I have like central knight, central pawn, central knight. My opponent doesn't have a central pawn. They have this knight over here. They have the semi-open file. I have this one. So now I understand better what are the differences, what are the imbalances in a position like this. And maybe that's the reason why so many people don't like playing the exchange French variation and they say it's a drawish line, because you don't create any imbalances in that. So if you have ever played the French exchange variation, that happens when your opponent plays the French defense like this, and then white takes the pawn, black takes it back. Now we both have a central pawn, the same open file. There are no differences in the game. It's too symmetrical. So I'm going to develop my knight over here, you develop your knight over here, then I put my bishop here, or this bishop over here, I don't know. And then you can castle, and your opponent's gonna castle as well, bring my rook to the e file, they bring their rook to the e file, and there is no difference. You're basically mimicking each one, right? So I play my move, black plays like a very similar move, and there are no differences, no imbalances to explore. That's why a lot of times I like playing this move right here, so it creates an immediate imbalance in the position. I have something that my opponent doesn't, and this is something that's going to create some tension in the position, and that's when we can create complications and maybe winning chances. Now let's take a look at a real example. This was a game played by Fabiano Caruana and as white and Nakamura as black, and this was played in 2015, a long time ago, but we have a Sicilian defense, which is a position that is immediately imbalanced, right? So instead of playing like a very symmetrical move, black goes for this move, and that's why a lot of people say that if you play the Sicilian defense as black, you are playing for a win, not for a draw, because this is a position that is very imbalanced, and usually in the main lines, white's gonna castle here, king side, queen side, and black king side, so we have opposite sides castling, very aggressive, very tactical, sharp game. So immediately white has something that black doesn't, and vice versa, black has something that white doesn't, and we already have imbalances in the position. It's something different here. Okay, so it's not a symmetrical position. Knight f3, d6, typical open Sicilian game, takes. This is a very typical here. This is a dragon structure. So white goes bishop e3, fianchetto, they defend the pawn over here, and then black goes for castling. White's gonna move the queen so they can castle queen side. That's what they do. And after d5, takes, knight takes. We can already see here that there are some imbalances in the position. So white has these two open files right here, an open and half open file. They are going to try to place the rooks over here. So you're gonna plan your moves based on what you have and your opponent doesn't. That's why we ask this question: what do I have in my position that my opponent doesn't? And what does my opponent has in their position that I don't? So it's very easy when you ask yourself these questions. So here we have these open files, and we're going to place our rooks over here so we can have disadvantage over our opponents. They can't do the same thing. They can do this, but they have this open file too, but it's not the same thing. They have this isolated pawn and this isolated pawn here, and our pawn structure is much better. So this is an imbalance as well. So the bishops are staring each other, and here they just trade them. So bishop takes and queen takes. And after that, we see that now we remove this very strong bishop over here. We are ready to develop this and bring this rook over here to the center of the board. The knight is in a different position here. So this game is full of imbalances. Now white's probably going to try to advance these pawns and attack black's king here. So black plays queen there, immediately kicked away. They just trade those pieces. And as you can see here, white brought the rook to the center of the board, and we have here in this position Fabi playing for the imbalances. He knows what he has and their opponent doesn't, so they are playing for that, right? So we don't have to see the entire game here. It's just not necessary to see that. It's just so you can understand the two questions you have to ask yourself. What do I have in my position, and what does my opponent has in their position? Just in case you're curious, that game ended up in a draw, and this game right here is another real example played by Kasparov and Nakamura as black in 2016 in a Blitz championship. And Gary played one of his signature openings, which is the Scotch. And it's one of my favorite openings as well. I just don't play the classical very much anymore. I just play this one, which is the Potter variation. I have several videos on that in the channel if you want to see it. But he goes for the classical bishop e3, defending the knight. Then they keep attacking the knight here. So they defend again. And after developing the knight over there, this one is attacking the bishop. So the bishop usually retreats over here or over here. In this case, Gary played bishop b3, and after this move, attacking the pawn, white just goes ahead and castles here in this position, d5, striking at the center. After this move, we can see the queen was attacked, so takes, and then the knight moves away because it was being hit by the pawn. So in this position is a good moment to stop and analyze, what do I have and my opponent doesn't. It's very interesting because this creates a lot of imbalances. White has two central pawns, very strong central pawns. Black just has one. And you can see the difference in the materials. While white's got the pair of bishops, whereas black doesn't. So they have two knights and a bishop. We have two bishops and a knight. This half open file here will be key for white in attacking. And this pawn is going to become very menacing in the future as well. Black can choose which way to castle here, but white has already committed castling kingside. And here, maybe this is still not developed yet. So white has to address that problem. Then after takes, bishop takes, they trade queens. And then white ends up grabbing that pawn over there. And then after takes, we can clearly see here this in this position that white's pawn structure is very, very bad. So Gary's pawn structure is not really good, whereas Nakamura's pawn structure is a little bit better, even though they have this isolated pawn. White has isolated double pawns, then these pawns are disconnected as well. But material advantage is up for white here. So they have two minor pieces against just one. And this king is not very safe. It's in the middle of the board now, even though this is more going towards an endgame. White is winning, of course, because of the material advantage, but pawn structure is not really good here. So maybe black can play along these lines, right? So white's gonna develop the knight here. And after this pin that happens, so black can't take this, black's gonna probably try to bet on this passed pawn that is advancing, and white's gonna play to stop this advancement of this pawn. So they start stacking their pieces on that file. The king goes out of the pin, so now they have to move the knight away, attacking the pawn. They go ahead and defend it. So every piece here attacking this pawn, they're going to bring more to the game. So the bishop comes here to attack the pawn again. And inevitably, it's going to fall. So they come here to defend the pawn, but it gets checked. So now it's too late. And this pawn is going to fall no matter what. So white goes ahead and takes the pawn in the right moment. They trade pieces. Black just refuses to trade the rooks here. And we don't have to go until the end of the game, but we can see here that what are the differences? The pawn structure is very bad for white. It's much better for black, but black has a bishop, an extra bishop, so they have a piece up. In this case, it's very easy to see what white has and what black has and what are the differences. But here, if they just trade down, they're probably going to end up winning. Even though the pawn structure is pretty bad for white, you have to mind your own weaknesses as well. Okay, So that's pretty much it. In a very summarized way, the imbalances are very simple and easy to understand, so you can assess the position strategically if you just consider these two simple questions. What do I have in my position that my opponent doesn't? And what does my opponent have in their position that I don't? So if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, leave a comment down below as well, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. And as always, I see you guys in the next